In the last few episodes of this series about how to build an app, I have been outstanding in my field. This very dull, flat and featureless field, but this place wasn't just picked at random, it's the ideal test site for the problem of boredom that my new app might help solve. Press a button, and hopefully you will get an interesting fact about the location you're in. And if it can work here, it can work anywhere, because in 2001, this square kilometre in the East Riding of Yorkshire was the blankest, most featureless area that British cartographers could find. It was therefore named the most boring place in Britain. It had nothing in it except a single electricity pylon. The pylon has since been demolished. If my app can offer a bit of mildly entertaining distraction here, it can do it anywhere. So let's see if it works. Let's build it. I've done some research, and this has sort of been tried before with things like Google's Field Trip, but all the examples I can find were over-engineered, over-complicated and fairly confusing designs that the public didn't really take to. I just want something that answers the question, tell me something interesting now. But I do want to save myself some of the huge time and effort that my friend and I suffered through the first time we tried to build an app years ago. So I'm going to start by sketching out a rough first version of my new app with just enough features to put it out there quickly and get user feedback to see if I'm headed in the right direction. It's time to make the minimum viable product.
Minimum viable product for me is the simplest form of your idea at any one point that you can use to try and obtain learning. And learning is really about trying to understand whether what you're creating has any value in the world. As a creator, you may find that you're quite attached to that idea and have strong beliefs around it, to the point where you feel almost blinkered as to how that could actually perform in the real world. So a minimum viable product is a way to get something, and the smallest possible thing, out there to test whether the assumptions you're making are accurate or true.
Historically, was it always like this? Did you always have to build just the basics, or were the old apps sort of building everything in first?
I think digital design has had to learn to adapt to the fact that you don't want to invest all your resources at the start of a project. It's tempting to build everything, code everything, design everything, and release it. And every single one of those steps has a cost associated with it. So I think what we've had to do is learn to distill what we're trying to do down to the essence and try and work out which parts of those do we need confidence in before we move to the next. So yeah, it's a change, but I think it's a fairly well understood concept now in most product teams.
I remember the first time Twitter became a thing, it was just sort of plain text messages. And I remember there almost being not arguments, but certainly discontent when they started adding in pictures and additional stuff as well.
The important thing is that they found something that people cared about. And if you were to take that away, people would be very upset. That's a question that we use a lot when we're trying to work with entrepreneurs or innovators in any way. Would people care if your app died? That's the essence you're trying to get to. And so the thing with Twitter is, as they added incrementally more features, people started to feel that initial value may be threatened in some way. So the primary goal for me is to get learning back into the product, and for me that means it doesn't need to be something you release to the wild. It could be something that you release to a very small group of people and get very, very quick and early feedback, or it could be something bigger that you can do at scale.
What would you say the difference is between sort of a prototype or a paper prototype and an MVP?
There are people in the startup world that would argue an MVP should deliver value to a customer or a user, in which case a paper prototype falls short in that sense. So in startup world, we would look to try and deliver something that would deliver value both to the customer, but then also to the business, and can prove in some way that you have something sustainable.
What sort of things do you want to find out from putting an MVP out there? What are the questions that you should answer?
A lot of the time, I think people want to get validation for their idea. It's so tempting. Actually, you just want to find out what's not working, which is a sort of humbling experience. But once you reset and you think in that way, I think you begin to kind of welcome that feedback. So you need to put the ego aside for a minute, and you need to put the experience at the front and try and understand what people are seeing and what they're experiencing, and separate those two things. So I'm just going to do a little diagram here, get this triangle. And up here we've got the idea of emotional design, and then this bottom layer down here is going to be, let's say, function. Does it actually help him, or does it provide any utility? But we've got layers in here, so let's give it 4 layers. And right at the top we might have something that is delightful, yeah? And then down here we've got something just functional. It does the job. And in between two we might have something that's usable. And we might have something that's, I don't know, say desirable. Yeah.
But you can't have any of these unless it's functional in the first place.
Yeah. So these are your kind of foundation layers here. And I think the danger is that a lot of people, when they think about an MVP, will create something down here.
Right.
And the danger then is that you haven't really created this emotional connection for people. So when you're thinking about your MVP, one thing I'd urge you to do is to kind of shift that layer and think this way. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so you're thinking about something that's not only functional, but also usable, and then you start to shift up into the desirable and delightful.
That's a really good diagram. That made a lot of sense.
So what assumptions are you making about the value that you'll deliver to your users? What makes it desirable?
I'm assuming that people will actually want that sort of thing, that
Okay.
they will want something that will help relieve boredom.
What kind of assumptions are you making about how you might build this in terms of technology?
I'm hoping that we can somehow algorithmically pull interesting stuff out of the data sets we have.
Okay.
I think that is actually a risk. I think
Okay.
it might be that we can't easily design something that pulls interesting stuff without a lot of manual curation.
We can test the assumption that there is value in the open source content without building an app at all.
And we did find
Yeah.
that with curation worked, but that testing was just me looking through an article and pulling something out of it and sending it.
This one's more about should we build it, because you've got to be able to support it.
Yeah.
And, so how do you think that you're going to support this financially?
I hate the term brand extension, but it's that sort of thing where if YouTube shuts down tomorrow, how am I going to connect with the folks who are already, invested in what I do and what I make? God, I hate sounding like that sort of marketing person, but it is that sort of sense of going, this is another avenue to connect with people.
It doesn't need to create profit. There still needs to be some resource to create.
It needs to not be a black hole that I'm throwing money down. Yeah.
So the assumption is that as an organisation, as a business, you can create enough. You have enough resource to deliver on this, whether that's development, whether that's content, whether that's marketing.
Yeah. Put that there.
Cool. Okay.
Because that is actually important for both. Actually, you know what? That's there. That's all three.
Okay.
We have to be able to pull something out of the APIs and the stuff that we're using. We have to be able to pull something out of the data we're using. Otherwise, it fails desire, it fails feasibility, and it fails viability.
Great. We have our answer. This is what we need to test.
And nearby is Oozefleet. It holds a village show in August, which was revived in 1965. I guess that's a fact. Someone has typed that into Wikipedia. This is going to need some work. What have we learned? Well, first of all, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, you need to constantly remind yourself of the problem your app solves for its users. This will help you hone in on the essential features that your MVP, your minimum viable product, absolutely needs to have. Secondly, map out the user flow. Once you have the essentials down pat, map out the user journey. Think through what people will experience from beginning to end. Third, don't make it perfect, just build it. A first version is, by definition, a first version, so don't worry if every feature isn't there. But that doesn't mean you can't afford to include the little bits of polish that'll convince users it's worth sticking with. Prioritise the user experience. And finally, Build, measure and learn. The whole point of launching the MVP is to get feedback as soon as possible. Get your app out there in front of people and use their reactions to tweak and improve it. Next time, how to work with a coder.